Welcome back, Guardians. It is I.
Greetings, Guardians.
It is I, Jurio11, and this is my co-host.
Salem.
And we are here back again with another episode of the Destiny Lore Emissary Logs. Very
It
exciting.
is quite the honor to be sharing information with you, Guardians, especially with the young wolf.
Ah,
I hope
yes.
that whatever we go through today can help refresh your mind.
And share a little bit of culture and history with the various groups within our universe. Uh, so, what are these logs? These logs are about, well, as I said,
The former disgraced Emperor Calus, to be fair, to be
yes,
frank.
yes. Today's topic is going to be the Empire of Calus. Um, so, Salem, as a cabal aberrant, if you will, please, who is Calus for those who may not have been around to meet him or even see him or whatever?
Well, Calus himself is a very power-hungry and greedy man. Of course, he is the father of the Empress Keitel, a woman I so follow. But don't let his fancy talk butter you up. He's only in it for himself, as he always has been. Well, not always, but we'll get into that soon.
Of course. From the lore that I have procured over and all the footage that I have procured over, it appears that Emperor Calus was at one point the emperor of the Cabal Empire. He was preceding a very long line of emperors, um, but his past and his rise to power are quite fascinating, and what we will be discussing today.
I will admit that. He was quite the interesting man in his youth. But too bad he didn't keep up that standard in his later life.
Indeed. So, obviously, we do know of the relationship between Calus and his daughter Keitel, but what is seldom discussed is that, according to Keitel's own recollections, he did have other children.
He did. He had two with another woman.
According to the lore discussed in one of Keitel's journals, as it will, it goes over Keitel listening in between Calus and this other woman, who was definitely not Keitel's mother.
Certainly not. It's even stated that this woman was more worried about Callus not holding up his political agreements than, you know, being an actual emperor.
Whereas Calus himself, according to the transcripts that were covered, it appears that Calus at the time didn't really care about his, being an emperor. So he took offense to the fact that all she seemed to care about was his political promises and not being happy in hedonism, which we will discuss later.
And the aftermath of that conversation, of her slapping him, his response in retaliation was to take the children out of his brood pouch and hand them right back to her,
Correct.
saying, "If you cannot love me, then how can I expect these children to do so?"
Exactly. Exactly. Which is just goes to show the kind of person that Calus is. Now, we are going to, before we go more into his earlier years, let's discuss his childhood. So, according to historians, at the time of his birth, there was already a emperor or empress of the Cabal, but she was exceedingly old. She was put aboard.
Very.
She was put aboard a ship known as the Leviathan, a ship that Calus himself would become exceedingly acquainted with. Now, what the Praetoriate, the ruling government, did at the time to ensure that the Empress wouldn't actually be able to perish and give the moniker of Emperor over to Calus, they kept her aboard the Leviathan, kept her at near light speed consistently to stop her aging, and she proceeded to become ossified.
She did not like living that long.
She lived for quite some time, but she was definitely unhappy, and according to Calus, at some point, she most likely ended her own life to spare herself the pain and misery of being kept alive, ossified. For those who don't know what ossification is, it's when your body turns to bone. It is
Practically, because Cabal aging isn't exactly the greatest experience once you hit the ending stages.
exactly.
We don't just die normally.
No, it's Barrett Cabal. They age very differently than humans. They have a different lifespan. They have different anatomy. So it's, for them, aging works a little bit different. For humans, they kind of just wither and husk out, whereas with Cabal, they ossify, which is a punishment in of itself.
That's why we'd rather die in war than anything.
Exactly. So after that, Calus, after the old Empress died, Calus was able to grow popular with his people and with those around him. He grew a friendship with one of his bodyguards by the name of Lictor Sheotet. And
He was quite the warrior.
Oh,
I will admit that.
From the documents told, he was very much quite the warrior. The man pretty much took a lot of poison, bullets, and stabbings for Calus, which is just...
And also an entire ship crash.
Really? That happened.
And
okay.
He got gunned down in his ship, crash landed, bursted out in a roaring rage, and proceeded to charge at his assassinator.
Sounds about right.
Sure, he didn't survive, but that is definitely one way to go out.
Definitely so. When it comes to Calus and his rise to power, we have to talk about the Praetorian. The ruling government of the Cabal Empire was made up of the Praetorians, which are representatives, senators, and the consul, who's...
the consul had his own...
We'll discuss his fate in a different episode. But...
let's just say Calus did not take a liking to the consul at all.
He did not take a liking to any of the Praetoriat, who had pretty much kept him as a gilded slave, or more like a trophy, if anything else. Had him paraded around, but never gave him any political power. Calus at the time...
especially when he was the heir to the throne.
Which is certainly upsetting. I mean, I can only imagine if I were the heir to a throne and the government that was supposed to be under my rule,
under your rule, decided, no, you aren't going to have any power here.
No. And that probably fed into Calus's extreme hate for them. With some other notable things, for example, their policies, particularly on war, which collided with his own. Unlike the majority of the Cabal, Calus had a different perspective on how life should be spent living. For a lot of Cabal history and for a lot of their culture, it's derived on being warmongers and warriors, whereas Calus wanted more hedonism and opulence, where happiness was taken above all other things.
I will admit, as a Baron myself, his ideas at the time wouldn't sound so bad if he didn't just brush off the entire thing that made us who we are. We didn't come to conquest from hedonism. We didn't become this feared race by being happy. We did it through brute force and war alone, and we found joy in that. Well, some of us have. Not all.
Correct. And for the Cabal, it seemed that for a very long time that was the way. Most of the Barent of the Cabal believed that war was the only way, until Calus started a populist movement against the Praetoriate. So, what happened? One day, Calus, who had become a very populist leader, which means for the people, popular, population, populist.
He was.
He went to the Praetoriate and said, "You senators and you Praetoriate and you government leaders are so detached from your people, and you do not accurately represent your people, and you do not love your people. And I, the great Emperor Calus, do love my people. So, what is going to happen is..."
That's what I admired about him, is that he was for the people at the time.
Which was noble, and whether you can interpret this as him actually being for the people or him truly serving his self-interest could be debated. Now, I would like to hope that for a time that he was for the people and that it wasn't just his personal hedonism and ego driving him, even though that would end up being the case by the end of his reign. But going back...
In the beginning, though, he was kind of for the people, I will admit that. He wasn't the most horrible emperor after taking out the Praetoriate. It's just later on when things start to get a little messy, which we will get into.
So, after discussing this with the Praetoriate, one of his first actions to seize power was to, slaughter the Praetoriate. After he entered their Senate room, as it were, to tell them that they were so out of touch with the people and that he would be taking over, it is at least transcribed that a series of Cabal, more specifically Colossi, charged their weapons and then proceeded to shoot and murder all the Praetoriate, with the exception of the consul, which Calus had a personal vendetta against, and once again we will be going over that.
His punishment, I wouldn't wish on any Cabal.
It's quite serious and quite brutal. We will not be going over that in this log, though, because that will be reserved for a different log involving the Midnight Coup itself. We will be discussing the Midnight Coup very briefly at the end, but the specifics will not be discussed at this time. Now, after he took power, he ruled the Empire for various numbers of years. He appointed certain people in his life to help him. He retained Lictor Sheotet as his personal bodyguard.
And he saved him from many assassination attempts.
Of course. And it was noble that he retained his power. And he kept him as a bodyguard because their friendship was so strong, which would see a bit of tension as the years went by, but at the beginning their friendship was exceedingly strong and they grew close. Other members of his empire that were notable at the time were his appointment of Amunarath as the Evocate General, pretty much the military leader of all legions.
We'll get into her another time because her downfall is something else.
Let's just say the Arath in her name certainly spells a bit of foreshadowing as to her fate.
Her parents did name her after the legend of where that term comes from.
Exactly. Other important members include Mali Amali, who was
The Everjoy. He was the one who made all the celebrations, the parties.
The holidays.
Exactly.
He was a former, we'll mention him very briefly, he was a former Colossus who showed quite a bit of ferocity, but after Calus took power and realized that, ferocity wasn't really needed in his new empire, he changed Mali Amali to the Everjoy and gave him the task of creating celebration and holidays and parties to further his love of hedonism and opulence. Other members include... another member includes Atzot, who was a scion at the time who had constructed the Oxa, or as some others pronounce it, the Oxta machine, which was similar to some describe it as a fortune-telling machine. It reads the future, whereas others describe it as a ancient civilization's black box. Nevertheless, because of the immense power that the Oxa, or the Oxta machine, held, Calus named her Freeborn. The only scion to be freeborn.
Yeah, anyone who doesn't know what it meant to be a freeborn, you were free of slavery, basically. You had free will, you had rights in the Empire.
At the time, the scions were considered slaves. That would not be the case, and would be... We'll discuss what happens later with that and why it's so important in a bit. Now, the other important member, or the two most important members, was his daughter, obviously, who he tried to keep on a specific leash. Tried to keep her close. In fear that he would lose her.
And also tried to win her love with gifts that she accepted, but she never really wanted them.
Yeah, his relationship with his daughter is exceedingly complicated, and we will go discuss that after this. The last member of his empire, who he really put above a lot of others, was a gladiator that he met in the fighting pits. This gladiator was an albino runt who was surprisingly intelligent and had quite the battle prowess. After seeing his performance in the gladiatorial rings, he uplifted him and made him a primus. This albino grunt is very famous in our history in Sol. That albino grunt,
quite the legend.
That albino grunt was Dominus Gaul before he became Dominus and was just Primus. Primus of the Red Legion, to be particular.
He even trained Keitel in her youth as well, for anyone who doesn't know that. He taught her that her anger and her wrath could be used as a tool. She could let it rumble and bubble up before having the perfect time to strike and letting it explode like a volcano. She was a very impatient child, but we'll get into her story another time.
Exactly. Good stuff coming up in the logs. Now, after Calus retained his new power and his new status, things changed for the Cabal Empire. They went from a warlike race who pictured only of conquest to one that was more obsessed with hedonism and happiness. For those who don't know what hedonism is, I will explain what hedonism is right now. Hedonism is the obsession with guilty pleasures. Things like sex, or eating, or partying, or drinking, or anything that could be considered a vice. And when it comes to hedonism, it's obsessing over these and putting them above all else. Calus, as time progressed, or as some others could say, he was always this way, but it just became more apparent over the years, was very hedonistic. The man loved many things. He loved to party. The man would hold parties over pretty much just about anything, including when his daughter returned from action. While he did not like his daughter going to war, he had to kind of deal with it. So, when she returned from war in a non-confrontational engagement, he threw her a party. But, as Keitel describes, he wasn't really throwing her a party, he was throwing himself a party. He has been known to
Even Empress Keitel stated that very clearly to Amuna Wrath when they were sitting down having a cocktail.
Exactly. Calus has a tendency to very, very much obsess with it. That's very telling in his obsession with gold and jewels and wine and drinking.
Calus made it very clear when he was talking with his daughter that the only reason why the warriors are out there to fight is to keep the parties going. Because in Cabal culture, if you are being deployed or if you just came back, the Cabal hold a celebration for your return or your deployment, or for the warriors that are still fighting.
And we will discuss a particular event that I will read directly from Keitel's journal about his opinion on that very shortly. Now, speaking of Calus and his expanding empire, while he was emperor, he was able to subjugate certain other races, including those such as the Arkborn and the Clips and the Sindhu. All of these races would be subjugated and, well, first fought by the legions, including people like Dominus Gall, Amuna Wrath, and even Keitel, who herself obviously was a star pilot. But all of these would go under Calus's empire during his rule. So, while he was an opulent individual, that did not mean he strayed too far from the ideals of Cabal imperialism. He still subjugated people. He still was a warrior of sorts. Just not in the sense, he was a warrior in the sense that he could still be imperialistic and still subjugate, but his method of being imperialistic and his reasoning for being imperialistic were far removed from the original Cabal ideas.
Mm-hmm.
He did
you
not.
You are right about that.
He did not send his men and he did not send the men and women of the Cabal to fight these wars for the simple act of conquest. No, as was stated, he sent them to keep the party going. That was the end goal for him. Now,
their lives don't matter to him unless they do the main purpose that he's given them. To go out, fight these useless battles that he didn't care about, and keep these celebrations going to keep up his opulence.
Exactly. And I'm going to now read a passage from the journals of Keitel, and I will be doing an impression of Calus. Hopefully Salem does not insult my my interpretation.
Oh, please,
Calus.
do delight me. I would love to hear this.
So, here is the reading. Malia Mali says my father has just finished his 5th tub of pulque, which is a type of wine, and unbuttoned his imperial raiment. In the days of the Praetoriate, public intoxication carried the death penalty. Obviously, this is not the case with the new Cabal at that time. Now my father dances among the miniature fleets, overturning 2-meter models of doomsday weapons the legions wish to build. He plays invisible drums with his hands and stomps his feet and does the horns with his mouth. Bum, 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 bum. Come on, come on! Damn you, will you not join in? Make wonderful noise! Bum, 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 bum! Stomp with me! Your Imperial Majesty, Molly Amali says, laughing brightly, looking furtively between my father and the icy Evoca General. Emuna Wrath has requested that we take a moment to honor those soldiers far from the homeworld. Well, damn you, Emun, my father says cheerfully. I know what you're about. You want to drag your dour, dolorous diligence into my house of joy. You want us to remember it's you who made all this happen. Your legions and your fleets. The Praetoriate may be gone, but the Cabal still a fighting empire, grim with the knowledge of all that came before us, was swept away by the Dark Flood. And everyone who's not fighting on your front is a scavenger. Dead weight, is that right? Your Imperial Majesty, the Advocate General says neutrally. I only thought of tradition. Oh, tradition is it? Praetorian tradition. Like your blood etchings on your provings. Damn tradition. Tradition is how the old force the young to reenact the miseries. My father picks up a giant forked warship as though, and looks through its central aperture at Emuna Wrath. Damn you! Can't you feel anything? Can't you live, Emun? I see how you prey on my daughter, you know. He snaps his jaw shut so suddenly that there's a little thunder. Your daughter... Oh, hold up. Now that is Emuna Wrath. Apologies. Your daughter seems to me a fine pilot, Emuna Wrath says. Oh, does she seem fine to you, does she? My father's face bulges through the sun-devouring maw of the wooden prototype. The actual warship will dampen gravity with a lambda smoothing effect, so that its target star cannot hold itself together against the blast of its own heart.
From what Calus is saying, it sounds like he thinks Emuna Wrath is trying to come on to his daughter.
Not... From what
I can saying, not exactly. I'm just saying how it sounds to me.
Sounds. Now, I'm sure Calus in this case...
Something.
I'm sure Calus in this case, given the context, is more describing the fact that he's preying on her to
be a warrior.
And follow his her line of thinking, not necessarily in this, oh, I would like to be romantic with you.
Obviously not.
And fun little tidbit, the wooden prototype he's discussing there is something that a lot of Red War veterans are very aware of. He is describing the Almighty before its construction. Anyways, back to the reading. She meets with your approval. Then why, Emun, do you haunt her? Why do you steal her from me and send her away to die in some crushing chasm of a gas giant, shattered by Sindu missiles, compressed by the depths, by the deep where the worms lurk? Isn't that what you say, Emun? In the heart of every gas giant, there is an abomination waiting to hatch. So why have you convinced my own daughter, my own flesh? Everybody is absolutely silent, absolutely still. To go play in the grave womb of the worms instead of being happy here on the home world into a bottle where she could share my joy. Another fun fact for those who don't know, the worms he's describing, hidden in a gas giant, is most obviously a nod to the worm gods in Fundament. Whether or not they understand who the Hive are at this point is likely, but not confirmed.
Wonderful impression, by the way. I'm getting a wonderful laugh out of this.
I'm very glad to provide some entertainment for our local cabal. Anyways,
I'm sure the Empress herself would probably laugh.
I would be.
Or find offense.
That would
I'm
be
not
that would
really
be
sure.
quite the sight. I don't think she would find. I think she might find the interpretation or the
Impression.
the impression of Calus to be amusing, but
just not
maybe
the
not
recalling of what we're talking about.
exactly. This comes from one of her journals, so reliving this might not exactly be the most what's the word?
Pleasant
relivings. Anyways, back to the entry. I should not speak, but I do. Father, I had a duty to the people to serve. Duty! Duty! He hurls the model like an accusation. Mali ducks. Sheotep moves as if he will leap on it and cover it with his body, like a bomb. What you had was a voice whispering in your ear, a poison in your tea, a pox in your blanket, a lie that everything is given value by its suffering and its strife. Everyone cowers before his shout, except the moon and me. I am shocked to find that I do not fear my father. I have listened to him cast off my own siblings. I have known him to murder beasts I love too well, but I am not afraid of him.
Which, by the way, that is a sly hint to Empress Keitel's former war beast, Milos.
And we will discuss that when we go over his cruelty. Everyone... Oh yeah, we already read that. My apologies. This is what matters! He roars at a moon. Not your dire legions and the grinding process. You only exist to allow this party. This is the point. Even the drums have stopped. Can't any of you have any fun? He bellows. I have heard quieter alarms in the simulator when I fell into the dark hydrogen depths. Can't any of you live? Am I the only one here who's not utterly deranged? The only reason we don't all kill ourselves is that we feel good. The only reason we do anything at all, even breathing, is that it feels nice. That is the only way the universe has ever found to make existence tolerable. The only reason to exist is that fickle little quiver of reward the brain gives us for eating, or drinking, or dancing, or working, or freeing our people from the bedamned Praetorian, or loving our daughter. That's all that's worthwhile in his life. Stimulation of the three primary vagus nerves. And if our whole psyche weren't built on the need for that reward, what would we be? Hive? Vex? Nothing Cabal, I tell you. Nothing Cabal. He flings out his arms to embrace us all. What's the point if we can't have fun? What other point could there be? He stares straight at me, and he says, as if from my ears alone, I would have had 1,000 more young. If only I could make you happy.
I will admit, Calus did love his daughter. It just definitely wasn't in the right way. Especially saying that to her, I don't know if that should be taken as a personal blow or just depressing.
It is very clear that Calus, at this point in time, is a broken man to his core. I mean, if you look at his history, the fact that he was groomed to be some gilded slave, then takes it back and becomes an emperor and just obsesses over feeling good and hedonism and opulence and loving his child, you can see that he's a broken individual. He's exceedingly broken.
He's a man of great loss, but that doesn't mean whatever he does in the future is right.
He's a man broken by his upbringing, and a man who, despite all of the problems, becomes a monster in his own twisted, broken way. This passage perfectly describes on the level of mental illness that Calus was experiencing, and I can only equate this to something similar to what is described as bipolar disorder. It is very clear that he has exceedingly manic episodes and then depressing points, which is on point with something like a bipolar disorder.
Even from what I heard from the Empress herself, many even say he was like this long before Keitel was even born. Even during her birth, he always had these mood swings. He would go from high highs over the love of his daughter and then low lows when he keeps on thinking about what her future beholds. It's definitely not the best situation to be raised by.
It's looking into a situation where an empire was being ruled by a bipolar individual who could not even comprehend the damage he was causing. He was so obsessed.
And of course, we'll learn that a lot when we learn the absolute polar opposite Empress Keitel is.
And we will see how far he has dived into madness as time progresses. Now, there was a mention there where he was discussing where Keitel was discussing her lack of fear and how he had murdered something. Calus, in his cruelty, did an unspeakable act, but in order to describe that act and how absolutely cruel it was, we have to describe the Baron's relationship with the war beasts.
Oh, the war beast. Oh, I love them.
For those...
Especially my own Ponyo. My little baby.
I have petted little Ponyo. Quite the little scamp. I do like him as well. I can see why the relationship between the Baron and the war beast is the way that they are. Now, from what we can understand, or what I can interpret from both psionic divinations and discussions with the Baron, their relationship to their war beasts is 10 times greater than humanity's relationship with canines, dogs. The relationship between the two is so absolutely amazing.
Especially when you learn that every war beast is bred for a specific handler.
And they grow up alongside them. The war beast is born at roughly the same time that the Cabal is born, and they grow up together. Inseparable. Imagine a dog that is born at the same time as a baby, and they grow up together for hundreds of years. That bond is the bond that the Barrett Cabal share with the War Beasts. And that is why Calus's action against Milos, or Milos,
is disgraceful.
Is cruel beyond compare. You see, Keitel had a war beast named Milos or Milos, depending on your translation, and like most other war beast and Barrett Cabal relations, they were inseparable. But Calus, in his cruelty, decided that no one should love a beast more than him, especially his own daughter.
Mind you, Empress Keitel raised this war beast by herself. She trained it herself, fed it from her own plate, and even from her words herself, she still remembers the moment, like, she still remembers the feeling of both their breaths in sync when her war beast was laying on her chest and sleeping at night. That is something, if you take that away from a Baron, you take away that bond. I find it unforgivable, but the Empress is much more forgiving than I am. Even after everything.
Calus slaughtered Milos.
Butchered it.
Butchered it, had it killed. Because, in his own words, the dog, or in this case the war beast, was loved by Keitel more than she loved him. And this was one of the defining actions of the relationship between Keitel and Calus that made her despise Calus. One of them.
She
not the only.
The butcher too. She knew that the butcher didn't want to do it. She just knew she was never going to forgive her father.
The man who decided that the beast that she would have spent her life with was slaughtered for something so petty as being loved more. There are other instances of Calus being cruel. I could discuss, once again, the slaughtering of the Praetorian. I could discuss his treatment of the consul, including his castration. We'll go way into more of that when we discuss the Midnight Coup.
I would never wish that on any Cabal.
I have seen him.
Children are everything.
From what I've heard about surviving Cabal and Scions and various different accounts, the man had a propensity to be significantly cruel, especially to those who did not share, who either got in the way of his hedonism or did not share his love of hedonism.
I think that was pretty obvious when you read the conversation between him and Amuna Ra. He did not like her very much.
He valued her as nothing more than a tool to enact his plan. He did not view her as an equal. He did not view her as a friend or an ally, but nothing more than a tool.
I would like to bring up one thing particularly. When one of these parties were going on, the return of the Empress Keitel, or the Princess Imperial at the time, they were sitting down. Amuna Rath and the Empress were having a conversation with one another about her father. Obviously, the party was more for him than her, and they were discussing that. Then, a bombshell happened. She was 35 at this time when Keitel learned about this. Her mother has been dead. She never knew, no one talked about her. But finally, someone broke the ice, being Amuna Rath, but Amuna Rath thought she already knew. Her father didn't say anything when she even asked the guards. They would not tell the poor Empress what happened. But finally, after so many years, she learned that her mother is dead. and she never even got to meet her.
And I think this, while it's unintentional cruelty, I think this is probably one of the most cruel acts of all between Calus and his own daughter, which is keeping that away, that information separate. And we will discuss the lore of their confrontation very shortly. I will read that passage as well. So, around this time during his empire, he did a lot of interesting decisions. He focused more on hedonism. He, in fact, freed all of the scions, making Atzat's arrangement to become obsolete by design. And he progressively pushed away a lot of people in his inner circle. The one that he pushed away probably the most, and the one who he probably could have saved him, was his own daughter. And we are going to quickly discuss that before getting into some personal opinions about what Calus could have done differently to save his empire, even if we do not agree. So,
would you like to go first, or would you like me to?
Well, we will discuss that after this lore reading, specifically him pushing away his own daughter.
Mind you, everyone, Keitel gave her father many chances to do right. Many. Even after everything he has done, she still tried to give him a chance. And he failed. Every single time.
The events of this lore reading are immediately before the Midnight Coup. At this point, the Midnight Coup is being planned, but Keitel decides to give Calus one last chance after seeing a moment of Calus's weakness through the eyes of Dominus Gaul. They were hooked up to the Oxa machine, planning the Midnight Coup, when she was able to gaze into one of the memories of Gaul and view her father in such a depressing light at one of his low moments. So she, before the events of the Midnight Coup, she approaches her father to see if she can just understand him and reach him one last time. And this is how that interaction went. I am on my knees before my father, and I mean to confess it all. I will betray all of the conspirators. I will reveal their motives. Atzat's warning against the Chalice worshippers within. Also, her disdain for being not the only freeborn now. The Advocate General's weary eye on the enemy without. The Consul's longing for his blossom days, when the people knew their place and he still had his manhood. The Ghost Primus Gaul's brave new world of martial discipline and full spectrum dominance. The Adele, who is Malia Mali, fear for his own survival, and Lictor's personal disgust, and my star, my father says. He has a round silk splendor on the throne, a world unto himself. His nip... I apologize. This next part's going to get a little bit graphic for all the young viewers out there. I would mute for the next minute.
Mind you, before we continue, it's crucial that the females only have chest plates, while the males do actually have
the correct reproductive organs for
children.
Children bearing. So here we go. His nipples, can't believe I am saying this, are like a dark poison fruit, bejeweled. I remember nothing of their taste. Very, very graphic, but let's continue. I don't suppose
Oh,
you...
Empress, forgive me.
This is very interesting, Keitel, I must say. Quite the descriptor you have there, but anyways, let's continue on to the more important information. I don't suppose you've come home for good. Father, I say, I want to ask you something. He sips from a goblet. An overturned bell better than 5,000 years old. Likely his bell of conquest. Of course, of course. What did you want when you took the throne? Want! He beams at me. Now you're asking the right questions. Not duty, but want. What I wanted, my star, was to make a better world. For you. A piece of my heart wails to believe him. But I was not yet conceived. What did you want for yourself? Other than the chance to conceive you, my star? Well... He fishes around the edge of his throne, holds up something knobby and worn down. Very few Cabal will ever see this. It is the Imperial Trinket, an ancient bone retrieved from the debris around the once radiant black hole. Scholars tell me, Keitel, that eons ago a species lived around this deepness and built an engine to tap into its polar jets, but something came upon them from the dark and killed them all. For those who are ill-versed, he is mentioning the Harmony, which was one of the species mentioned in the Books of Sorrow. The species was in turn made extinct by the Hive. Now, the
many species go extinct.
Oh, we will get into that in the near future.
Not to mention so of the Cabal, but I will admit they do have a higher number count.
The Harmony lived in this... near this black hole singularity, they called it, and they had this... built an engine on top called the radial mast. It was a pillar of light. Quite a spectacle. I wish I could have seen it. Now, amongst the Harmony lived a species that some of you Guardians are well-versed in knowing due to your raid on the Dreaming City. The bone that he possesses, the Imperial Trinket, is an Ahamkara bone.
I wish I was alive to see the look on his face, but I was just only recently conceived during the Midnight Coup.
The bone itself has the ability to grant wishes, as the Ahamkara themselves are wish dragons. We will discuss what is going on. I know the tale, one of Advocate General's proofs that we must become mightier yet to survive. Of course you do. Now this bone is a predator. It feeds on the gap between what you have and what you want. Did you use it against the Praetoriate? Yes. And do you know what I found? That you could not. Because you wanted nothing. I was lost, Keitel. Adrift in fog, utterly unable to desire or need. All I could do was be. The bone is nothing to feed on if the wielder wants nothing. And yet, ever since your birth reawakened me, Keitel, I have prized above all else the ability to want. The hunger to exist is more than mere existence. That is what I want now. To feel, to be more than just being. It is interesting that he says this, because Ahamkara magic, for those who don't know, tends to bite the user in the back. The fact that he wanted to feel, and the fact that his wish, that part of his wish was technically granted, probably had something to do with his own downfall. Tends to happen when you mess with Ahamkara magic. tends to...
Of course, there's many instances where many people, Cabal, Elixni, humans, mankind awoken, were all screwed over at least once by an Ahamkara. I'm not saying everyone has been, but I definitely know someone who is still being screwed over by an Ahamkara.
Exactly. So it's no surprise that if this is the wish he wished for, that his downfall would make more sense and be more written in the... How should I say this? It was guaranteed after he made that wish. His failure was guaranteed. Back to the reading. What of my mother? Didn't you want her back? Oh, child. He looks into his wine, into his bone, and begins to salivate with tears. This is how Cabal cry, passing the anguish from the brain to the bowel for digestion and expiation. She had to care for me when I was but a husk of a man. I was selfish. I was cold. I broke too much between us, and I could not bear him I could not bear to hear him stumble any closer to grief. She left, and you found someone else. I quickly finished. Yes, I tried to find someone more appropriate to my station. It didn't work, but at least I had my daughter. He folds the bone away and he smiles tenderly at me. And what is a daughter except the wish to have something to love? So, I must ask, Salem, somebody who is not well versed with Cabal anatomy as much as I would like to admit, is that true? Do you guys actually cry through your mouths?
As much as I would love to deny it, considering you guys find it so strange, it is true. We cry through our mouths.
That is...
It's hard to see through helmets and masks, but shockingly, we have emotions too.
Well, I figured you had emotions, but it's just such a interesting anatomy.
So you find that strange, but not anything else we do.
I find a lot of aliens tend to find other aliens to be very strange. I will say that. But it is just exceedingly fascinating. Hopefully
and I find how you guys, I guess, Guardians in general, I find it strange that all you guys really do is kill things and then hope to get the best loot.
That's Guardians for you.
I can't really disagree. I mean, if I had a weapon that was made from a god, I think I'd be a little bit full of myself too.
Exactly. Now, it is obvious and evident that Calus could not wish for Kaido's mother to come back. Because at the end of the day, he did not love her anymore.
He didn't want her back.
Which...
Why would you want someone back who left you? But that still is no excuse.
This decision ultimately would be the nail in the coffin, the final straw for Kaido. And it was at this time that the Midnight Coup was enacted. The members of the Midnight Coup include Atzot the Freeborn, Mali Amali the Everjoy, Dominus Gaul, who was at this point the Ghost Primus, Evoca General Amuna Wrath, the Consul, if I'm reading this correctly, There was a tea merchant?
Yes, the tea merchant was actually one of Calus's long friends.
Somebody by the name of... Let me look this up. Is Skull of Fantor. Interesting.
You are correct.
I would have to do more research on this guy. It seems that he was not very written a lot about, but I guess I'll read more about him later. Anyways, and the final
yes,
member.
We'll read him together through a nice cup of tea.
That seems ironic. And the final member of the Midnight Coup, and arguably the most integral piece, Keitel, herself. When the Midnight...
May I remind you all real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
The original plan of the Midnight Coup was not just to exile Calus, but Gaul's original plan was to kill the man. But if you all have been on to the Leviathan, when the whole fungi was growing on it, you'd learn through Calus's mind that Keitel stayed the blade. She did not want her father dead, just exiled. You may continue.
Keitel made sure that Calus did not die, and instead sent him into exile, aboard the same ship that his predecessor was forced aboard, the Leviathan. The Leviathan ship, for those who don't know, is based off of a creature found on Torbottle known as a land whale. Now, the Leviathan is a scaled-up version of this whale.
A very scaled-up version. Very.
Exceedingly scaled up, but this golden flotilla was to simultaneously serve as a new throne for the Cabal Emperor, and a prison. The members of the Midnight Coup, forced Calus onto the ship and sent him into space, hopefully to never see him again. His time as Emperor had ended at this point, even if he himself says that he was still the Emperor. Now, this is where we will end his story for now, and instead go on to mention other notes and personal quips about Calus, and also some personal opinions on the man.
Again, even if our personal opinions may not agree with one another, you gotta learn the perspective. I am a Baron. I come from the Empire. I have my own opinions about the Emperor just from how I was raised to think about him.
Correct. Now, obviously we know what happens, or many of us know what happened to Calus after the Midnight Coup, but the rest of Calus' story will be described in another log, from his time entering the Sol System, and his shadows, and his downfall and eventual death. But moving on, we will discuss now we will discuss what Calus could have done to prevent the Midnight Coup. So, Salem, as a Baron yourself, what do you believe Calus could have done to prevent his own demise?
Well, first off, Calus himself thought if he promised his daughter to the Dominus Gaul, or the Ghost Primus, maybe the Midnight Coup wouldn't have happened. But I find that very hard to even comprehend or believe that the Midnight Coup would stop just because of that. What I feel like he could have done way much differently is to keep his military culture. Sure, opulence does sound satisfying, but he also needs to learn that not everyone is going to have his same views, and viewing everyone as a tool isn't exactly the best way to rule. You may love your daughter, of course, who wouldn't love their child? But I will admit this, even my family has some issues in it, but at least they tried to see my perspective, especially after everything that's happened to me. I cannot go back into war. I can't serve properly. But I can still make use of myself, and they accept me for that. What Calus failed to do was just accept and properly support his daughter, first of all, and not hear out the needs and wants of his people. Or what the most proper benefit of his people are. Especially when their culture is everything to them. War beast, gladiator pits, fighting pits, rites of proving. Everything he took away was honorable to his people. And he thought that sending out people on nonsense wars and battles was going to surprisingly make them loyal? Absolutely not.
The three things that I think Calus could have done to even if he didn't wish to give up his hedonism, that probably could have spared him, was first, to not make the Scions freeborn. As disgusting as that is to say, as slavery is wrong in any context, it probably would have saved him, especially considering the divination powers of the Oxa machine. He probably could have saved himself. The second thing that Calus probably could have done to prevent his downfall was to try to understand his daughter. Not view her as some extension or something that he needed to make love him, but to just understand her perspective. Had he done this, he probably could have had Keitel on his side. And the third thing that he could have done to prevent the Midnight Coup, which I do not understand why he didn't do this, but so be it, he could have killed the consul. Had that have happened, both the consul and Gaul would have never risen to the position that they had grown. Now, do I think that despite all of these, do I think that even with all these changes, could there have been a coup? Correct. There probably would have been. I think in order to truly prevent the coup, he should have prevented all of the members of the coup from even getting close to being able to overthrow him. But I feel that those three figures, had actions changed, probably would have changed the trajectory of the first Midnight Coup.
I feel like only a few, if he made some changes, I feel like only a few of the Midnight Coup members would have never went against him. But when it comes to the consul, I feel like that decision is just inevitable. You took away his manhood. You sent him out on the deserts of Torabottle. You stripped him of his station. I don't think whatever you do to that man now is going to change his mind. Well, past tense, considering the consul is no more.
Certain members, I believe strongly that no matter what action he would have taken, would have still rebelled. I think Amuna Wrath and him were just completely irreconcilable due to his obsession with hedonism. I feel that Lictor Sheotet
and their constant arguing.
Lictor Sheotet would have also turned on him eventually due to his personal disgust, as it was described, with Calus and his as time progressed. And then I think it would have been
I
the
believe outside
Everjoy.
still would have gotten against him.
I don't believe so. I think that if she had retained her pure freeborn status, I think she probably would not have turned on him.
Maybe. But she
And
also a very selfish scion.
correct. I think had Callus valued her more and made her feel special and more, and potentially even fed her ego,
Feed her ego.
I feel that he could have had access to the Oxa machine and seen the coup that was going to happen and shut it down. The only reason it was suspected, and Callus even stated it himself, he suspected a spy, and he suspected that the coup was coming before it even came, and the number one suspect that he suspected was Gaul, but he doubted himself, and instead of acting on it, he felt guilty for doubting Gaul, who was at the time one of his most prized warriors.
He was kind of like a son, considering if you take in the fact he took the Ghost Primus in.
A distant son, but a son
Very
nonetheless.
distant, but yeah.
But I feel like certain aspects of the coup were destined to happen, whereas others probably could have been prevented had Callus had acted differently. But
Hell, I'm
unfortunately,
gonna throw it in here. Even the tea merchant probably would have accepted an apology or something. Not exactly an apology, but if he changed, I'm pretty sure his old friend would have forgiven. Man, he was becoming. I don't know if forgiven is even the word.
accepted probably
Accepted. Thank you.
would have
Thank
been
you.
better. Um, we'll do. We will. I'll let you have your piece now, and then I will discuss my own piece. Then we'll make some other notes that we may have missed out, and that should be it. But let's start with how do you feel about Callus?
Well, I was conceived a little before the Midnight Coup. My parents made it very clear to me at a young age that Calus was throwing away everything they were fighting for. So it may be biased that I never liked the man, but after learning everything he did to my empress and the people before me, so many so many amazing barons died because of him. Members of the Midnight Coup I saw were legends. I always wanted to meet when I was younger, but never got to because of what he had to do in retaliation. Emperor Calus is a selfish man. I will not take any words different. He is selfish in my eyes. He doesn't deserve to even be an emperor. Sure, he may be born into royalty, and I have to respect that. But that doesn't make him my emperor. He never was, and he never will be. He has no respects in my family. He has no respects in my ideals. And if he were to ever show up again, I wish to watch him die myself. Because he does not deserve my pity. But those are obviously just my thoughts and my opinions. What about you, my fateful companion?
From a librarical and lore scholar perspective, and as somebody who has seen footage of the Guardian going up against him and and some of the dialogue that he has tempted the Guardians with, even though they are a bit without, how do I say this? They are contextually distant from the Calus who was before. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that this man, from everything that I've seen about him, was severely broken and very likely mentally ill. But because of his relationship with the former Empress, he was able to obtain power in a populist revolution and pretty much blow it all away because of his mental illness, his desire for hedonism and opulence, and his utter failure to properly connect with those around him and instead push them away by being more hedonistic and more mentally ill and more of everything that he was.
The Empress was barely even raised by her father because of it.
And I feel that when it comes to Earth history, and I know a lot more than even figures like the Master Rahul and his decryptors of engrams. From what I can tell in Earth history, Calus himself probably would have compared himself to somebody like figures like this Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, when in reality he was more akin to some people like Caligula and Nero, who were also emperors of their own times, who were described as being also egotistical, narcissistic, mentally ill, and hedonistic. It is quite the comparison to make between those characters of Earth history and Cabal history, but it's one thing to read about beings who have been dead for centuries and potentially even eons, versus a being who I can tangibly see and hear and see footage of Guardians like the Young Wolf fighting. And it's quite interesting to see the perspective of how hedonism and narcissism can truly cause the ruin of an empire. While Calus wasn't exactly the death of the Cabal Empire, his place in its downfall into the state that it is now is
set them back.
He set the Cabal. I think of it more like him plotting the course for a collision with destruction. His actions and his hedonism and his exile and his mismanagement of his own empire would eventually lead to the near death of the Cabal Empire. And the only thing that truly saved the Cabal was his progeny, which is also ironic that he himself was nearly the ruination of his empire, and yet it is his child, his progeny, his legacy,
his only heir
that
we know of,
that saved his empire. The mess he made was something that Keitel took up and completely turned around. Those are my thoughts and opinions on him. I think he's an egotistical, narcissistic, hedonistic, mentally
gluttonous pig,
gluttonous monster who through his own person nearly caused the destruction of his own empire and practically could not let it go. And we will discuss that note on a further episode down the line. Now, are there any other notes or mentions that you would like to mention about Calus? Any trivia facts that those listening to these logs might wish to know about Calus pertaining to his time before his exile? I have a couple notes, but I would like to hear
May
any from
have a
yours.
few, depending on the actual topic of discussion of time periods of Calus's reign. Calus, I don't know if the Guardian or the Young Wolf still has this weapon, or if they gave it to the Empress, but I'm pretty sure she wouldn't even want it back herself. The Heart Shadow, the dagger, or for you guys, a sword, considering how small you are. That was a gift for Calus originally by his mother, which was the former Empress. Then, it's a weapon that's obviously passed down from generation to generation. Even if you break it, if you still remember its shape, it'll go back to being what it was. Calus gave that same sword to Keitel, and she gave it right back. She accepted it at first, but of course later on she gave it back. And then there was a never-ending cycle, technically after the exile, of him wanting to assassinate his daughter with the same sword by a scion, and she would return that sword back, broken, with the scion's head. Several times. Over and over. Because he just does not know when to quit. There was also moments where he had good relationships, especially when we are talking about his first wife. We do not know her name. And honestly, I don't even know if we will soon, but hopefully in the future we will finally pick something up. But they talked about philosophy, they talked about mythos. Even when the Empress was bearing the child of the Princess Imperial, she talked about the star, which was called Keitel, and its legend on how it was named after a hive saying, which is pretty ironic when you learn about what happened to us. There was also a huge deal when Calus was going to fight the Praetoriate. Victor Sheotet took a very major part of it, and when Calus became emperor, Victor Sheotet was the man, the legend, who made sure nothing happened to his dear friend. As you've mentioned, he's taken poison. He's dealt with being shot. He's dealt with explosions sometimes, and it's definitely not a pretty picture, but his loyalty knows no bounds. Except for when he realized his former friend is losing himself, and he felt disgusted with it. All those fighting, all that hard work to stop the oppressors, just for Calus to be something his friend never wanted him to be. But I would like to mention one last thing, is we still don't know what happened to the children of Calus. We know only of his daughter. We do not know what happened to the other two children that he bared. Well, he brooded. Maybe they've lived, maybe they haven't. But somewhere out there, there is a history of two Barents who just probably made it or probably didn't. They maybe have died on the War of Torabottle. They maybe have died before the wife could find, ex-wife could find another male. Either way, I would like to mention one last thing with Calus. When Keitel was conceived, he had to brood her for 9 weeks in a nursing chamber. And I think he stated this, or it might just be speculation on my part because of my memory. It was probably the best 9 weeks that he's ever had, especially when you can hear the little giggles of his daughter. Maybe one day I can share the same sentiment.
Very, very insightful and very cute. That last little bit right there. That's so cute, Salem. You should be so. You're a big old softy, Salem.
Oh, please. You want to see a softie, you should have seen me in my glory days.
Ah, those would have been quite the spectacle. Now,
I'm not sure if males would brood my children, considering of my station, but it would be nice.
indeed, well, who knows? Now, going back to other notes that I have plucked, going back to the Heart Shadow for those who are interested in science, because on top of being a lore expert, I also do know a little bit of science about our universe. So, when it comes to the blade itself is comprised of a metal called enactine, which is one of the most resistant metal alloys that the Cabal have discovered. Now, it is something called quantum mimetic material, which means it's locked. It can reform into its original shape as long as a psionic individual can remember its original shape. Which is why Calus was able to, while Kaito was able to break apart, she wasn't necessarily able to reform it because she herself is not psionic. Whereas her father, on the other hand, does have psionic abilities, which is something that's very rarely mentioned. He does have access to psionic abilities, which is the next major note. When it comes to Calus, surprisingly for a being that's, the Baron Cabal are not able to normally use psionic powers. Now, how did he obtain the psionic powers, which he did obtain during his time as Emperor, not after? His psionic counselor was able to give him potent psionic abilities, including being able to pull individuals in what is called a mind prison, which is very similar to a Ascendant realm, and yet different. It is vastly interesting how he obtained this ability, he obtained these abilities, and how he's able to use them in such an interesting and yet barren way of being more like a prison than something more complex and arguably beautiful that the Scions themselves are able to create. Goes to show both the difference between the Scions and the Baron, as well as his personal ability. The other thing I should note is Calus, while being hedonistic, was a gambling man. He loved to gamble. And one of the fun things that he used to do, which I personally find a little bit humorous about the monster that is Calus, was that in the gladiator rings, when he had whenever there was a praetoriate or a high-ranking Cabal that he did not like, he would force them to bet against him, where he would bet on Gaul, who was most destined to win, and the praetoriate / high-ranking official was forced to bet on the loser, or the destined loser, which I find exceedingly both callous and amusing. It speaks to Calus as a person. He's simultaneously funny and cruel at the exact same time.
I will admit that is very true. Honestly, it has been a while since I've seen Guardians try to convince the other Brockuses on the tower to gamble with them. I've seen it before.
Very, very, very callous of Calus to force people to gamble with him, knowing that they're going to lose. It speaks to Calus as an individual. Now, before we do our little outro, I'm going to now mention all the places where you can learn a little bit more about Calus if you yourself wish to learn about him. Anything pertaining to the Leviathan raid, including its armor sets and weapons, the beloved book, which is part of the
You can
Nightfall
also read
collection.
the Chronicon and Confessions lore books that you can find in the lore tabs.
That is, yes, that is also very good. I would be careful of the Chronicon. It is very much a how did one Guardian describe it? A fan fiction. So definitely take note of that entry. But the Confessions and other stuff, for example, the Leviathan armor and weapon lore tabs, the beloved book. These are all accounts from Calus's reign. These are all the places where you can find more about Calus and his rule. Very lovely, very interesting, and please do not be dissuaded from learning more about lore characters that you may find interest in. That's how me and Salem became who we are. Anyways, that will be it for this log. We appreciate everybody for tuning into these logs. It is very, very, very welcome and very nice to see so many people are interested in learning the lore and culture and history of our universe. You can listen to these logs and further logs on YouTube and Spotify. And if you wish to follow me on any other social media, you can find me at JorioGaming00 or Jorio11 Lorekeeper on various, including TikTok, X, Discord, whatever, what have you. Salem,
You
if you
can
would like
obviously
to...
find me on my own pages as Addie H Art on both X and TikTok, and my Twitch stream will be linked into my TikTok.
Excellent. Please go follow Salem, aka Addie, fantastic artist.
Ah, you don't mean that. I'm joking.
Of course I do mean it. You're an excellent co-host.
You're very excellent as well. I wouldn't ask for a better co-host.
Thank you. Now let's talk. Before we go, we'll let you in on a little spoiler. The next episode we are covering is called The Osmium Legacy.
Can't wait to get into that can of worms.
And the episode after will be the title for that episode is called The Opulent Fall of Calus, where we will be revisiting Calus and more particularly talking about his time after his banishment up into his death. So anyways.
And of course, all the things he's done while being exiled and banished.
Exactly.
Because man cannot go one day without holding a grudge.
Talk about grudge holding. And I've seen
and
a lot of...
And that's just parents in general. We hold the biggest grudges. So I have no room to talk.
For sure. Alrighty. Is there any final words you want to say to the audience?
I have one thing I would like to say to you fellow Guardians. Please tell me, why on earth do you guys just... I guess the only best way to describe it is you look at a god, you look at things like these beings more giant and powerful, and this is also coming from a Baron, so I also have no room to talk on this. How do you just look at that and be like, yes, that's gonna be a fine gun?
I'll have to discuss. Truly. I will have to discuss that our Guardian's propensity to make gods weapons at a later time.
How do you even manage that? How do you take a being so giant and turn them into an auto rifle?
It's a magical process that I will explain to you later. Now,
Oh, I can't wait. And
any
also talk to me about this Julius Caesar guy.
oh, I would love to share my lore on that. Now, any final words you wish to say?
We are Cabal. We eat the mountains, and we drink the seas. And we will conquer the stars. And I'll see you all on the battlefield.
We'll see you around, Guardians.
Goodbye.
Cue the outro.